Welcome back to Restless. I'm Father Joseph Gill, and here with Lauren, Diane, and Paul as we navigate through a crazy mixed-up world using the Catholic faith as our guide and our light. And today we're going to talk about probably the craziest thing that's happened to all of us in this past year, and that is COVID, because it's about the one-year anniversary, and it's certainly a kind of a grim anniversary of the 1 year of President Trump declaring this an official national emergency and the borders being closed and pretty much life shutting down was right around this time last year. And it impacted everybody and in different ways. And just, before we started recording, Paul kind of said, oh man, that week brings back so many bad memories. So like, what was your experience, Paul, when that happened?
Yeah, I just remember there was just so much fear and uncertainty going on. And I remember I was like only one panic moment the entire COVID era, let's say, that I had, where I realized that my dad was still going into work. Now, my dad at the time is 64. He was 64, and he has had a heart attack. He's had quintuple bypass. He has high blood pressure. He's actually fairly fit. He works out like every day and stuff. So he's not in terrible shape, but he has all the pre-existing. And I remember calling my mom and telling him, like, stop letting him go to work, like, because my dad loves to go to work. And I
see where you get it.
Right. And then I remember going to Costco. As I was talking to my mom, I was driving to Costco to do my own little prepping. And I remember Costco being a disaster, and there was no chicken and no toilet paper and no
what was
paper
with that
towels.
Toilet paper run?
It's panic. It's
crazy.
people being unreasonable about their expectations. And I remember that. And then I remember me and my girlfriend, we went out to dinner the last night we were allowed to. We went to one of the Italian restaurants in Stamford, and it was half full, and it's never half full. And that was sad. And then I remember driving up Bedford Street in Stamford on St. Patrick's Day, which is usually, I mean, it was empty. It was dark, the entire street. And I remember thinking, it's usually, well, it's another type of disaster, but it's a good one, I guess. I don't know. It's usually a mess with people everywhere and drunk and everything.
Pub crawls.
Yeah. And it was just dead. It was empty. And it was just so somber.
Yeah, that was definitely a weird experience. Have you guys been touched by COVID personally? Like, have you had it? Have you had people that you know have had it? Anybody in your family or friends pass away from it?
Unfortunately, my grandmother was in a nursing home, and she contracted it and died at the end of May from COVID.
Oh,
so,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, she was 97. So it was the most somber thing wasn't that she passed. I mean, she was 97. Was that we couldn't have a funeral and invite the whole family and kind of do a big celebration. We weren't able to do that.
Nor could you be with her in her final moments.
No, and so my dad and his brother were told, you can go in and say goodbye, but they had to put on hazmat suits, essentially, and masks, like the most intense masks they could find. And you had to sign all these releases to go say bye. And they just said, it's too much. It's just too much. And so they weren't able to say goodbye. My aunt lives in California, and she was actually on her way to Connecticut when she passed. So that was pretty sad.
That is so sad.
Yeah.
What was your guys' experience?
Well, I just remember, honestly, it was just the week that everything started to, like at the beginning of the week was so normal. I was supposed to be traveling to Tampa for work, and then, they told us, PwC sent an email and said that all travel by plane, train, whatever is canceled. You can drive to an office if you want. So like my meeting was rescheduled to New Jersey, and I stayed in a hotel, and you could just sense, I mean, there were all these like Lysol, boxes around the office like I've never seen before. It was just a weird environment. And then by the end of that week, I mean, I was basically there for like a day and a half, and then they were like, okay, well, you guys need to go home or close in the office and take all your stuff because we don't know. So it just went from like, totally normal to like completely shut down. It was just the weirdest thing. And then I think that weekend, actually, it was such a blessing. I think my niece was baptized, and that was basically the last opportunity before, June or whatever, when the churches kind of reopened. So it was great that she got that in. And then I do remember, like, it was when the bishop, I think, basically said that, and I guess the governor, masses and everything are going to be shut down. I do remember going, Father Joseph, you said the 8 a.m., and that was like the last mass that I went to. So I distinctly remember that. And actually just crying there in the pew of like, I don't know when this is like.
There were a lot of tears at that last mass.
Yeah, I mean, it was. Yeah. I was so. I honestly thought the day before was going to be the last mass, so to be able to go to that was such a joy. But then just sitting there afterwards, like, I don't know when this is going to come back, and feeling kind of lost after that. And then, honestly, I think that, like, I wasn't really scared of the virus, but I think that the fear that the media sort of, and just honestly, maybe the media fed to other people, because I don't really watch TV or pay attention to the news, like, just very busy with work anyway, but I think that really sort of impacted me of, like, having other people kind of questioning what I was doing in terms of, like, going to adoration or, like, going to get coffee or, like, go to the store or whatever. It was, like, life or death type of thing. Like, am I making the right decision? Am I being selfish? Am I, like, not, I don't know. It was just a confusing time, I think, until we knew a little bit more about, what was going on.
Yeah, I think that the lack of knowledge was what made everyone so fearful.
Yeah.
Nobody knew how it was going to play out.
Yeah, exactly. And then sort of just like I don't like to live in a state of fear, and just, just seeing that sort of being lived out in other people's lives, you could just see that no wonder mental health, is such a problem now, just because of, just the virus itself. I think it was almost like a fear that is worse than the virus, and you could see the impact that had on people, not just the physical repercussions, but sort of the mental, emotional, spiritual, and how that impacted friendships and relationships and all that. It was just crazy.
Yeah, definitely.
So for me, the moment that I'll hit, I was in Spain. March 11th was the day President Trump announced that they would be closing the border. That was my first full day in Spain. And turns out my cell phone was connected somehow because my dad called. It was like 2 a.m. Spain time, like, Lauren, you got to get home tomorrow. And I was thinking, no, I don't. It's 2 a.m. I'm exhausted. Like, I flew overnight the day before. Then I had a full day, very late night. The Spanish stay up late, mass late, eat late. So, but then, of course, I couldn't sleep. I was up for hours. Like, do I have to go home right away? Lots of confusion. I'm like, I'm going to get back in because I'm a U.S. citizen. But at the time, that wasn't even clear. And then I was worried that my flight would be canceled, because if all these restrictions were now in place, maybe the airline would cancel my flight. And I'm like, oh man, what if I'm stuck here? And Father Andy's like, so what if you get stuck here? I was like, you're right, I guess, like, if I get stuck here, I get stuck here, figure it out. So there was definitely a lot of stress and confusion and question and, like, is the retreat going to happen or not? My retreat happened. It was amazing. It was more special because there were less people. There were only 14 women. So even that, it was much more intimate with the sisters. We had a few, moments like, oh, we're going to have to close the retreat early because Madrid is locking down. And then it was, no, we don't. Madrid's not locking down until Monday. We can finish the retreat. There were some things like that. So it was certainly unique to be out of the country and know the border was closing and I had to get home. But I was there, so I was there for the experience. And you're not even allowed to have your phone on the retreat. So then that was another form of stress. Like, oh, what if my parents contact me again? Like, they're already worried sick and so mad at me, I think, that I'm here. But then Father Andy was like, give them my number. They can contact me. I was like, oh, yeah, you're right. They can. Like, just put me at ease. And then, I had my experience. It was wonderful. Then I had this stress of, oh, no, I have to quarantine now. And I'm not going to be able to go into work. And, like, that makes me bad or something because I'm going to be working from home. And, like, oh, ultimate. It was like 2 weeks before the finals of the end of our season. And my team's, like, in first place. Like, we're gearing up to win. I'm like, oh, I'm not going to be able to go. Turns out everything was shut down anyway. So I was no worse off. I didn't hurt anybody, by being in Spain. So that all worked out. And then I got some perks. Like, my flight back on Sunday was empty. There was nobody on this flight, a few Americans, and we got all the meals because they had the meals prepared already. So I hadn't paid for, so I got that bonus.
Nice.
And then, of course, I went through JFK and there's this big long line and everybody's right smack up next to the next person and no one has masks at this point. So I'm like, well, this is good. But it's been a year. I've been tested for antibodies 3 times. It's come back negative every time. I have not had COVID. No one in my immediate family has had it, but I have some aunts and uncles, cousins who have had it. They recovered. I think they're all fine. And then we had 2 deaths in the family this year. One is unknown. It was like a sudden thing, and don't know if it could have been COVID or not. It like happened abruptly. It was my cousin's uncle. And then my Aunt Nancy died, but she had osteoporosis, and I think it progressed rapidly. And so the challenge with that was, of course, like we couldn't visit her.
That's really hard.
And she was moved around a few times too, and yeah, so that was a challenge. I mean, like we had her at Christmas the year before, and so sad, she's gone, and we couldn't participate in her funeral either. They just did their immediate family. We don't know, are we ever going to be a part of something for my Aunt Nancy? I don't know.
Yeah, that is sad. Actually, even now I'm doing funeral masses for people that died a year ago, because they had perhaps had a burial, 9 months ago, 8-10 months ago, but they never had a mass. So we're still doing that, kind of catching up, as it were.
Wow.
Yeah, my experience, I was actually just mostly annoyed that the paintball trip we had planned was canceled.
Oh, with the youth group,
The youth group. We had like 20 kids signed up too, which actually is coming up next weekend. So I'm kind of excited.
You're looking at me.
I
know you want me to go.
I'm hoping you're coming there, Paul. Yeah, I just really want to shoot you with paintballs. But and I don't know. To me, as the whole thing was unfolding, the thought that just kept coming to mind is, you can't think clearly when you're panicked. And panic doesn't solve anything. So I mean, it's good to be cautious, but one must also use one's reason and not jump to the kind of the immediate worst conclusion ever, which was kind of that the world was coming to an end, and so even as I saw many people stocking up on toilet paper, I'm like, well, I know how to use leaves. It's all good. And people, were very much panicking about some real things. Will I lose my job? Will I this? And I don't know. It never really crossed my mind to fear during that time. I was like, well, we'll just take it day by day and see what happens next. And I ended up getting kicked out of my house because I was living at the priest retirement home. And the bishop called me and said, yeah, I don't want you tracking anything in for these poor retired priests. You need to go move. So I moved out and I never moved back. So, it was definitely a different experience for all of us. Thankfully, I was not impacted. None of my family died this past year. Everyone was very healthy. Actually, none of them got COVID. So praise God for that. I had like friend of friends, but I know many people have been impacted a lot more, which is very sad.
Yeah. I had an experience where in December, I actually got like a very bad case of pneumonia, which I was tested about 4 or 5 times for COVID, and it wasn't COVID. But it was amazing how the health system just did not want to deal with me. And that was very disappointing, I would say, where because I didn't have COVID, they didn't know what to do. And in order to get diagnosed with pneumonia, you need to like go get an x-ray. But I had a fever. So it was this whole catch-22 that I was caught in with the health system. And no doctor would see me because I had a cough and a fever, which is COVID symptoms, even though I was tested negative. So they couldn't listen to my lungs. So I need to go get an x-ray, but I need to kill my fever first. So that was probably the most stressful part of all of COVID, was having a pretty 10 days of 103 fever and not being able to get any medical treatment.
And did you find that when you had that cough and fever, that not only in the medical establishment, but if you coughed out in public, did people look at you like a leper?
Well, I wasn't going out in public.
Well, that's good.
But yeah, since then, I mean, even today, I still have a cough from it. It really ravaged my lungs. And so I have to cough sometimes, and sorry, I can't do anything about it. So I've gotten over that.
I've had more cough drops in the past year, mainly because even though I've been perfectly healthy, if you have a single cough, people are going to be like, what's wrong with you?
No, I had a funny moment. Like the first time I gathered with friends was, I believe in May. A friend of mine turned 30, and she had a backyard barbecue kind of a thing. And it was like, do we do this or not? And like we started out all cautious, but we were outdoors and we're all young and healthy. So, I mean, it was up to us, right, to come. And it was small. But I took a chip to try this homemade salsa, right? So I eat the salsa, I coughed, and everybody looked at me, and I go, it's the pepper. Like, the pepper made me cough. I swear I did not just cough. But it was so funny, because that was absolutely a thing,
Yeah, very much.
You better not be sick.
And certainly caution is good, but at the same time, as Christians, we have to take care of the sick. Like, we can't just abandon them or treat them like lepers.
Mm-hmm.
That certainly is what's happened in this country to some extent with a lot of people.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that have died, not from COVID, just from any illness, died alone in their houses because they were too scared to go to the hospital or the hospitals wouldn't take them. It's very sad.
Absolutely. And even people in nursing homes have died of loneliness, because there's a condition when you get elderly or young too, just called failure to thrive, where you just kind of give up your will to live. And that
So
loneliness factor is, gosh, so powerful. For the first time, I went into a nursing home on Ash Wednesday, and that was the first time they'd had a clergy visitor since more than a year ago.
Even for anointing?
Yeah. Even for anointing. Yeah.
Wow.
I wasn't allowed
Wow.
for the first 4 or 5 months to do anointings.
Really? Even my grandmother, they allowed a priest in.
We have a couple hospital chaplains in Stamford. They were allowed to go into the
Oh, I see.
hospital
Okay.
to do it, but
Yeah,
no
yeah.
other priest. So sadly, and that's partly the hospital's rule and partly the bishop's rule. So it's definitely been an interesting year. When we come back, we're going to talk more about kind of some of the effects in our society and in our own lives from COVID. Stay tuned.
Hey, did you know you can take Veritas Catholic Network with you wherever you go? All you have to do is download the Veritas Catholic Network app. Then you can listen to the live broadcast 24 hours a day. You can also grab podcasts of our original shows like Let Me Be Frank and Restless, and much more, right at your fingertips and on your phone. Download the Veritas Catholic Network app today at the Apple App Store or on the Google Play Store, or visit www.veritascatholic.com.
And welcome back to Restless. We've been exploring something that's been going on this past year, which has been the COVID experience that pretty much the entire world has entered into and how it's impacted our lives. And so I kind of want to hear from you guys about how it's impacted your relationships. Have you strengthened some friendships? Have you lost some friendships? Have you had a change in your dating relationships? How has this impacted your relationships?
So right before the week of quarantine, I play in a rock band, and we had the rock band come over and practice or rehearse or whatever, and we invited a few friends in the immediate area to come over and just hang out and listen to us play, and we had pizza and stuff. And that was right before we didn't see any of these people again for months and months, except for my roommate. And that was really we didn't even know what was going to happen. We were all still at work, and I remember that was the right before. But I'm so glad that we were able to do that. But I would say that in terms of relationships, I mean, I was fortunate. I was in a relationship, and that was, certainly didn't have to like go on new dates during COVID, which was good. And I live with two guys, and we're all pretty close, so that was really helpful, and we were able to keep our music going, and just kind of be. Although both my roommates did leave for a good 6 to 8 weeks, so I was by myself in the house for some time, but it changed.
Yeah, there have been friends I haven't seen in the past year at all, still to this day, and there are some people that I became much, much closer friends with, because there were some people who at the beginning were kind of like, you know what, we just need to form our own bubble.
Yeah,
You know, 'cause that was
COVID
kind of the
quarantine bubbles.
Quarantine
yeah.
bubble,
Yeah.
So there's one family in particular that has just since moved to St. Louis, sadly, but I used to go over to their house every week for dinner, and that was like a psychological escape.
That's great.
Yeah, my experience has been kind of the same of just like, losing, I guess, some friendships or just not seeing people, because I think everyone has sort of a different tolerance for the virus. So, I mean, I was so upset that masses were canceled, but they, like, at least in our diocese and in Stamford, there were opportunities at certain churches every day for adoration. So, like, I formed a very strong bond with a few guys and a couple girls in the Bible study that I started. And we had sort of a group text going, and we would just every day sort of, we met for adoration at night and kind of did that together, obviously social distance, whatever. But
Big circle in the parking lot.
big
I remember those. Yeah.
yeah. But it was great. It was like, it was such an opportunity to kind of like get to know the hearts of these people that I kind of knew on a surface level. And then, we started a group chat. We had a Divine Mercy reminder at 3:00 every day. Someone would do that, and we'd kind of like do it together or separately, kind of, electronically. So I thought that was beautiful. And, I think also just like COVID in general, things shutting down, people honestly some people had nothing to do or just more time, honestly, to spend in relationship with other people. So like, I mean, for me, I think it was such a blessed time of, like with my really good friends, just getting to talk to them more, because they're not running around all the time and we're not going from one thing to another to another. It's like you actually have time to talk and to listen and to to hear other people and to pray. So, yeah, I mean, it definitely affected friendships and relationships, but I think in a good way overall.
Yeah, I didn't see my parent. The one that was hard was I didn't see my parents for like months. Yeah, from way past Easter. So last year, and that was hard. They're only an hour away, so
That is tough.
That's tough, yeah.
And also, I have a 10-year-old niece and her family I wasn't able to see, and so that was hard.
Yeah, I mean, by the end of it, Zoom. I'm so tired of Zoom.
Amen to
Video
that.
chats.
People have said I've gotten used to it. It's fine. I'm not. I've
No.
not gotten used to it at all.
No.
I mean, I spend 6 to 8 hours a day on Microsoft Teams or Zoom.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
And it's just, I mean, that taught me too. Like, I mean, it's great that we have all these communication, mediums and everything, but it's not the same as, face to face.
Well, I wonder if things would have
flesh.
opened up quicker if we didn't have Zoom. That was a
Yeah.
fallback in many ways, particularly with
Some extent.
education.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, I think it would have been a lot harder. So I guess we could be thankful that, especially with education, I know you teach at a high school, but that at least in this time, the students were able to continue to have some kind of education, or a lot of the students were, because I don't know if that would have been possible. Maybe you could do things by email and stuff, but at least when we were all in school, there was no video. Maybe we had Skype, but it was primitive.
Yeah. I would say the one thing, if you were single, just, I think a lot of people kind of gave online dating more of a chance. And so there was like kind of a bigger pool, maybe a better pool, opportunity,
better
because it's like
pool.
no one can go out to meet people.
Yeah.
And they're not, like spending their weekends running from one thing to another. So, I think that maybe was a benefit.
Yeah, and I think
that's
people
true.
were longing to like you said with quarantine bubbles, but if you had somebody or a couple people that you could quarantine with, you could see them regularly and live a somewhat normal life. Like eventually, by the time we got to post Easter, probably like May or something like that, we started to have dinners and things back at the house, and we started to have small, like Memorial Day and July 4th, we had small parties and things outside, and that started to feel a little bit more normal.
Yeah. You just realize how important relationship is. Like, we're meant for a relationship. We're
Right.
not meant for this isolation.
yeah, definitely something we won't take for granted again.
No.
One of my favorite memories of the quarantine period was, my mom was really going through a tough time of not, my mom lives down in Maryland, and she's going through a tough time of not having masks and a tough time of not seeing her kids and seeing, her grandkids. And so we organized this plan that I was going to drive down to Philadelphia and she would drive up to Philadelphia and I'd celebrate Mass just for her in a park. And so we did that. And
Oh, wow.
My aunt came along, so it was just the three of us, and we had an outdoor Mass, and it was an insane day because it was 5 hours round trip of driving, but it was a gift really to be able to do that. It was a memory I'll never forget.
Perks of having a priest as a son.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Lauren, what about you and relationships?
Well, let's see. My immediate family and I guess, got a lot closer. Lots of time together. And we went through a whole phase, of trying different things to cook. We made gnocchi. That was a lot of fun. Definitely want to do that again. And other things that take more time, right? Because there was nothing to do on the weekends. And we'd maybe go up to Sherwood Island State Park, take my dog, because the Greenwich Public Beach was closed, which really irritated me. Like, why does this need to be closed? We can
Todd's Point was closed.
Yes,
Yes.
until like May.
That's absurd.
Yeah,
exactly. And then they reopened it, and they had probably 500 arrows. It's like, really? You need this many arrows to tell people which way to walk?
Well,
On a beach.
I went the wrong way and I got screamed at. So
Oh no! Did you
I guess
Yes.
they did need that many.
Imagine if you walked the
maybe
wrong
more.
way without a mask on, or if your nose was showing.
Well, that's exactly
Well, that's
what
how
I
I
did.
feel now, because now I don't, the arrows are still there. I take my dog. I go the way I want to go. I don't wear a mask. Judge me.
It's
I'm
outdoors.
outside.
Yeah, and you know what? The
You got
arrows
the
are blacked
wind.
out, so it's fine.
Yeah, so I don't know how people feel, but I always try to go to the side of the path. But yeah, essentially, it was a lot of family time. Lots of time with my dog. I feel like we've really grown. He now sleeps on my bed every single night. So
There's a shortage of dogs for adoption,
Really?
and cats and dogs. There's
Wow.
like a shortage of dogs, puppies.
yeah, that was
available
definitely a quarantine thing
Interesting.
because everyone was home, so they could take care of a pet.
by themselves. A
and
lot of
they were
people.
probably lonely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then for friendships, there's so many people that I haven't been talking to. like I have a lot of Frisbee acquaintances and they're all great, but you have your like activity in common. So normally I see people every week, or like right now would be Frisbee tryout season for the pro teams. So it all closed down, and I don't know. I didn't really reach out to that many people. Like for many months, it was just my best friend and I. We messaged like every day. We would do workouts together. But then even he and I it faded. I'm not even sure why. So my friendships definitely kind of diminished. And then like that little barbecue I mentioned, it made me realize like, oh yeah, I like this. Like it's been so long since I did anything with anybody. And then I did do, some more things like small groups, playing disc golf, or, I haven't played, well, I guess we played Ultimate once, Father Joe.
We did,
with
yeah. One time after
a group of
Thanksgiving.
kids. That was fun. And then dating, I did, the online dating app thing. I went on dates with 3 different guys. 2 were one and dones. Mutual. Do not message afterwards. Totally fine with that. Then the 3rd, we met a couple times, but then at that point I had reconnected with someone that I used to date in 2019. And then I realized I wanted to spend more time with him. So we kind of reconnected, and we'll just go for a walk with my dog, play disc golf maybe, drive around, get a coffee and a tea. I mean, there's not much to do, but it's one person that I have to hang out with, really, aside from my family.
And us, because we're doing the podcast together.
Yeah.
That's
We
true.
started in June.
I will say I've bonded with all of you guys a lot more than
For sure.
most. Yeah. Been a blessing. We used to, during the summertime, we got together to go hiking a number of times in the beautiful weather.
Well, until we couldn't find parking.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to tell that story?
Paul
I don't
almost
know.
rolled
That's
his
not-
car
I mean,
off
I almost
the...
destroyed my car. It's
yeah, no,
fine.
he
It
literally
almost
almost toppled his car down a very
Listen,
steep hill.
It wouldn't have toppled.
I have a picture.
I've never seen a car on 3 wheels.
Neither have
before.
I.
That was a first.
I have. I
That
put
was-
my car on 3.
And they were in the car,
They were in the car.
and it was tilted.
It was tilted.
It was great.
I wasn't there for this. Whoa,
Yeah,
what
there was-
happened?
We'll talk about that in the off.
I think it was Divine Mercy Sunday, so
It was-
Divine
it
Mercy
was
definitely
Divine
was.
Mercy Sunday, actually. Yeah. So Divine Mercy saved you, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I can say I've actually really enjoyed being able to share with people like, oh, I started something new this past year, and it's a Catholic podcast, and I meet once a week and we record 2 episodes, and it's just been great because I think for most people, unfortunately, there hasn't been anything new,
Yeah.
And it's kind of weird because for me, I had like on paper, I had a phenomenal year. Like I got big promotion at work, and I've just like everything seems to be clicking this year, but it still doesn't feel that way. And that's been really hard. I will say that we're next question is like what's going forward, and I will say that on May 20th, I went out for a run at around 5:30, 6 p.m. And I remember watching the restaurants on May 20th start putting out tables outside because finally we could have outdoor dining. And I was so happy. I'm a big restaurant. I like going out to restaurants. One of the things I do. And I remember just seeing tables going out on the streets and waiters getting ready to serve people was one of the happiest things I've ever seen.
Yeah. Yeah. To know that life is coming back to the city.
Right. I also had a barber appointment scheduled for that day, and then the governor pushed it off to June 1st, which was really annoying.
That for me was one of the toughest things because I had to find a clandestine barber.
Ooh, that
So I
wasn't
went.
allowed.
I went in someone's like backyard. It was so sketchy. She's like, "Pay me in cash. That's all." It's like, this is weird, man. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess girls can just let their hair grow. It's not really a problem.
Or trim it yourself. That's what
I
do.
didn't get a haircut for 3 months.
Yeah, I
It
didn't
was
get one
long.
for like a year.
Well,
Okay, you win. That's awesome. Yeah, one thing I got really into during the COVID shutdown was one of my weird hobbies is I love to forage for edible wild food.
Oh,
That's
Like
just-
mushrooms?
Like mushrooms. I did my first shrooms this past year. Yeah, that mushrooms, like good, like healthy mushrooms, like morels were delicious.
I like
But also-
hen of the woods.
I've not
love
tried hen of the woods yet.
You can find them at Sleeping Giant. They're
Oh,
everywhere.
You can probably find them everywhere.
Yeah, but especially there for some reason.
But there's so much edible wild food. And one of the things I've really noticed during the coronavirus lockdown was that nature started to heal itself. Mm-hmm. Like there's less pollution, less noise, and nature really came back in like abundance, way more than usual. And I've always kind of like observed nature because I do this foraging, and I was like, whoa, this is good, and this is probably what nature should be doing.
Yeah.
Right. Even parking lots. You saw a lot more greenery in the cracks through parking lots.
Yeah.
Throughout. I mean, even that's the same thing.
Amazing. Well, it's been interesting to look back, because COVID has impacted all of us. Some of us, very tragically with the death of maybe perhaps a loved one, or the way in which people have been deeply lonely. But hopefully you can also look back and see some good things that have come out of it, because God brings good out of everything, even the difficult moments of life and the difficult time we've all been through this past year. But hopefully at this point we can look back with gratitude, knowing that God has brought us to this point and that He's continuing to heal us as a nation and as a world, that we can move forward and life can get back to normal, God willing. Thanks so much for joining us on this episode of Restless. You can find us on Veritas Catholic Radio, 1350 AM, also wherever you get your podcasts, so Google Play and Apple Music and whatnot. And follow us on social media on Instagram and on Facebook at Restless Catholic Media. Thanks so much. Join us next time.